Welcome to Industry Vancouver, conversations about the residential real estate industry with Andrew Hasman and Jeff Benna.
Hey, Jeff Benna, good morning.
Andrew, how are you?
Good, good. Here we are in the thick of summer.
Yes,
And,
we missed
if
last
anyone's
month's edition.
Yeah, and if anyone's wondering where we've been, well, we've been traveling. We've had some vacation time.
Yes.
And this has been a good market to do that because it has been, let's not kid ourselves. It's been a slower several months compared to normal years. So it's been a good time for realtors to take some time off. But at the same time, on the other side of that, we are always working because we've got teams and we are working. So we're wired into the market. But this is a great opportunity for us to sort of take a look back a few months now because we haven't spoke online for a number of weeks. And we've got a chance to sort of look at some real numbers here and really dig into what's going on in the market.
Well, how are you finding things out there?
Yeah. So again, I was away for a few weeks, and while I was away, I know I didn't miss much. But talking to realtors, and now that I've taken some new property listings, I'm actually pleasantly surprised on the number of calls we're getting on some of our new property listings, detached houses in the West Side. And I think there's people realizing out there, the buyers are realizing that there is some opportunity in the marketplace. It's a great time to be doing some shopping because there's no buying pressure and there's great selection, there's great inventory. So I actually think it's okay, Jeff. The media likes to always exaggerate and focus on the worst of the worst or the most extreme. And I think that in very general terms, the market's okay. It's definitely a lot slower than what we're normally used to, but homes are selling.
I'll tell you a funny story. So the first 10 years of my career, whenever there was something bad in the news, my mom would always say to me, "Oh, Jeffrey, are you okay? Is everything going to be all right?" I said, "Mom, you know what? There's always work for good realtors."
Yeah.
And so I would convey that to her every time she phoned me in distress. And it was really funny. We were out for dinner with my mom and my aunt and the family. And my aunt looks over and says, "Oh, Jeffrey, the market's so terrible. Are you doing okay?" And my mom very casually looked over and said, "Oh, Ann, there's always work for good realtors." So I've always sort of gone back to that to say, yes, you know what? If you're working, there's transactions to be done. So
Yes.
we're seeing the same as you. Lots of listings, lots of choice, but also lots of buyers out there and sales definitely coming together on properties that are well priced, desirable in the marketplace. We've talked about this for a long time. There may be lots of inventory out there, but really good places or special properties, they come and they go very quickly.
When you weed it down, there's very few great properties priced correctly, right?
Absolutely.
And so you got to weed that down. I think the consumer that's looking to buy or sell real estate more than ever right now, Jeff, needs professional help. They need professional help and professional guidance because there is so much going on. There's so much noise in the general marketplace. You turn on the TV, you go onto YouTube, you look at Instagram, and there's just a lot of news coming at us. A lot of it's, I think a lot of it's garbage news or extreme. And I think when you sort of weed it all out, we're okay. And we're going to just be fine. The tariff thing, okay, we're dealing with it. Life's going to go on. It looks like the stock market's come back in a roaring fashion. And I think real estate's going to rebound as well. It's going to take some time, but more than ever right now, the consumer needs professional real estate guidance. And that's where you and I and other seasoned real estate professionals are really needed. They're really needed to help those that are looking to buy and sell and make some decisions.
This is a great segue for our standard disclaimers.
That you can say it, Jen. You'll say it.
We want to offer relevant, actionable information. That said, this is not investment advice. It should not be construed as such. We're better realtors than accountants, lawyers, and financial advisors. So full disclosure as well, we are owners of Vancouver real estate. We like it when prices go up, and we make a fee when we help you. I had the same thing, I'm watching YouTube and I'm seeing the headlines and I'm seeing things like presale condo market is in crisis. Headlines speak of panic, failures, widespread financial pain. Developers desperate, slashing prices. Investors walking away. Assignments flooding the market. Thousands of new units remain unsold. Supply is overwhelming demand. Presale buyers face negative equity and risk of default. So I hear all that and I think, oh my God, well,
It's attention grabbing, right? That's
very much.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought today it would be interesting to differentiate between the resale market and the presale market, keeping in mind, of course, that anecdotes are not data.
Yeah, correct. And there's definitely two different markets going on here. And I think when you dig down, you'll see that there's definitely some pain being experienced in the pre-sale condo, townhouse market, whatever you want to call it, versus the resale market where it's not quite as dire. There's no question. But there's definitely phenomenal opportunity out there for anyone looking and that has the ability to buy in this market. I think it's the best market in years. And you know as well as I do, Jeff, people that bought real estate in down markets when the market was out of favor, just like when you buy stocks when they're out of favor. If you're patient, you can do very, very well. And our clients that have bought in down markets have looked back and it's all smiles.
Absolutely.
Right?
Why don't we go through? I pulled off some information and we'll talk about the different markets and then we'll talk about some strategies that we can employ to make sure and capitalize on that. So when we look at Vancouver proper and the resale market for the second quarter of 2025, so the 3 months ending June 30th.
Yeah.
So home sales in Vancouver, about 18% lower than the same period last year. And that marked the slowest spring market since 2019. Detached home sales, they're saying, were particularly weak, while, interestingly, contrary to the headlines, condominiums and townhouses showed more stability.
And this is in the resale market.
This is resale,
Yeah.
Vancouver proper, Vancouver East, Vancouver West.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Buyer's market, when we look at the sales to active listings, typical home prices in Vancouver, so this is all Vancouver, just under $2 million on the east side, about 3.5 on the west side. Interestingly, down only 3 to 4% from last year.
In the mid-range of the market, prices are not cratering. They're down a bit, but nothing dramatic.
Nothing dramatic. And when we see that, the old thing about averages, if you've got 1 foot in a bucket of ice water and 1 foot in a bucket of boiling water, on average, you're comfortable. So we always take the averages with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah. Don't look at the extremes. Yeah. Take the outliers out and then look at what's averagely going on. Yeah. Makes sense.
Same with condos on the resale market, down 2 or 3% from last year. Prices have basically remained flat on a monthly basis and are about 5% below still the peak levels recorded back in 2022. So, we had that great COVID run up.
Yeah.
And then prices have kind of just stabilized where they are.
And a lot of that's because of interest rates going up, getting jacked up in 2020, back end of 22, 23, 24, staying high and then coming down quite a bit, and then leveling off. So, but it's funny. I find that in the affordable end of the condo market, that stuff that's sort of under, let's call it under 800,000.
Yes.
Sale, older buildings, that market's pretty good. I mean, we've got some clients that are trading in that end of the market, and as quick as we put them on the market, they're sold. Yeah.
And oftentimes with competing offers.
Yeah.
We have a client who's offered a number of times on a number of different properties, I think probably 3 or 4 times now. And at each turn, they've been confounded by somebody who was willing to pay a little bit more. Like the stuff that they were looking at, very popular segment, very popular layouts, and there's lots of buyers there for them.
So it's interesting because, no one wants to compete in this market because they think, well, why would I compete in a buyer's market? But that end of the market's very stable. And my buddy that I'm not going to name names, who buys the worn out condos, renovates them in a month, and we put them back on the market. Well, he's going gangbuster. The last one we did out in Burnaby near Metrotown, didn't have a lot of showings, but the first people that came in wrote almost a full price offer, sold. Now he's on to his next one. And we'll probably do the same thing in about a month's time when that one comes onto the market. So that market down at that lower end seems to be very stable, and there's no shortage of buyers. There's fewer buyers, but there's enough to keep that market fairly stable.
I like the work that unnamed buyer and seller it does. And I think that also goes to say that when those come on the market, he's created something that's great quality that the market is looking for. And not to lionize him too much, but he's actually helping to solve a lot of the housing crisis problems because he's taking unlivable properties and changing them into affordable, really nicely done.
It's amazing when he buys these places that usually been on the market for 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 weeks, unsold. No one wants them because they're dirty, they're unrenovated, and people just go in and they just put their nose up and they do a U-turn, but there's great opportunity in that end of the market. So when he renovates them and makes them look brand new again, boom, they're sold. People are looking for that kind of stuff.
And a fantastic skill set that he's developed over the years.
Yeah. So there you go.
We're seeing just 17,500 active resale listings, highest in several years.
Yeah.
Over the past 5 years, detached house prices on the west side, we're saying here, have increased by about 13%. So when I go back to the spring of 2020, I think that data may be slightly skewed because if you remember the spring of 2020, COVID,
2 months and it cratered. Yeah.
We had a sharp reverse right afterward.
So I think that stat, needs to almost put a little asterisk there because as you and I were talking before the podcast, if you go back to 2016, 17, 18, prices may not have moved in the last 8 years in some segments of the detached market.
Absolutely.
Right.
We're still seeing a lot of places below the prices that were paid in 2016 and even getting into 2017. So
it's amazing, especially the luxury Vancouver West market, that 4 million, 5 million plus market. Homes trading today at about, in my opinion, a solid 10% below what they were purchased for in 2016, 2017. So someone that paid $6 million then might be selling between 5.2 and 5.5 today.
Yeah.
If they can sell, if they can find a buyer.
If they can find a buyer. Well, and some of those larger homes are going no bid, right? And the very expensive condominiums, we're seeing the same thing where we've had discussions with other agents who have got gorgeous, beautiful, amazing, like once in a generation condos.
No bids.
No, you know what she's there for.
I've got one for sale right now in Cold Harbor and it's sitting there and there's very few calls. That's at the 9 million mark. And that's that market we're talking about, that high-end condo market. Very few bids. Almost in a liquid market. I mean, it's easy to say, okay, that property's probably worth X amount, but even at that price, are there any bids? Are there any buyers? Because that is the foreign buyer. That market that attracted all the foreign buyers and they're locked out indefinitely, well, till 2027. But I was hearing on the news wires that, it's political suicide for the government to basically allow the foreign buyers to come back in because that's going to push prices back up again. So that's probably the situation for at least another couple of years. No foreign buyers. And they're the ones that were buying all that high-end stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Let's talk a little bit about outside of Vancouver proper in the suburbs, because it's a little bit different story than right down.
Yeah.
Home sales outside, significantly lower than in 2024 and well below the record activity seen in 2021. Suburban areas are generally performing more slowly than the city itself.
Yeah.
Sales to active listings also clear buyer's market territory. Active inventory has increased 30 to 50%. Homes across all types are taking 30 to 45 days to sell, depending on the location. Now, in Maple Ridge, I'm seeing average prices down only about 1.5% from last year, but up almost 50% over the last 5 years. So once again, the overlaying areas, COVID effect, everybody, do I need to live downtown? Yeah, no, I don't. And so all the adjacent suburbs prices seem to have lifted in that time. So
everyone left the city during COVID and pushed prices up in the Fraser Valley, Sunshine Coast, smaller cities. Abbotsford, Chilliwack, I think Kelowna went crazy. Penticton went crazy. I remember when there were multiple offers in Penticton on old houses, like it was just crazy. And out in Surrey and such. And that market, I think, has taken a bit of a wall up in the last 18 to 24 months. Prices have definitely come off in some of those suburbs, much more than in Vancouver. People coming back to the city and bought secondary real estate investment properties as well, selling those, right? So
we're seeing, according to this information, condo prices in the suburbs generally declined by about 2 to 4% compared to Q2 last year. So a little bit down more than what they are in Vancouver proper.
Yeah. So Yeah, interesting dynamic, right? I always say to my clients, if you're an investor, although the investor market's been kind of hammered pretty hard, but if you're buying, it's always better to buy closer to the city, closer to the core where all the jobs and the infrastructure are.
Yeah.
All those people flocked out to the suburbs during COVID. Many have now decided to come back. And that market out there, I think, is having a much harder time than we are in the city.
Yeah, I would agree. So
Okay.
if we take a look at the resale market on the different property types for performance, detached homes I'm seeing here have experienced the weakest performance, highest time on the market, and largest year-over-year price declines. But
Yeah.
once again, we should put a little asterisk there and say, the really nice homes, the really special homes, the ones that are well priced,
Yeah.
those are still going very, very well. And what I think is leading to a lot of what they're calling weak performance is all of the assembly properties where there's 6, 7, 8 in a row and they're all overpriced. They've been on the market for 4 or 5 years. It increases the days on market average, and it also increases the amount of inventory that sort of skews the numbers a little bit.
And wasn't there talk several months ago, maybe it's still being talked about at the real estate board, of separating those assembly lots out of the detached market? Because they're kind of like, it's a separate thing altogether. Those lots that are all houses that are all, there's 5 or 6 in a row on the busy corridors, all for sale, lumped in with the regular single family detached properties. They should almost be separated out, because when they come to sell, they're not selling to a single family end user, they're selling to a developer.
I was part of a focus group with the board.
Yeah.
Talked about doing that exact thing. And
Yeah.
as far as I know, they're still working on it.
Okay.
That the wheels of the board.
Everything moves slowly. Yeah.
Or sorry, the realtors.
Well, yeah. But it skews because a lot of those homes we're talking about have been on the market for months and months, or even longer.
Years.
So it skews, right?
Yeah.
So, because the market for those land assembly properties has really been, again, the developers right now are not buying, they're on hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying big prices for more risk.
Yeah. No, for sure.
In the resale market, townhouses, interestingly, have shown the most resilience, only moderate price declines. Condos generally down about 3% from last year, with reduced investor activity, yes, and cautious interest from first-time buyers. So entry-level resale listings, priced competitively, still attracting multiple offers in some locations.
Yeah, that all makes sense. You've just recently listed a bunch of properties, so you probably have a pretty good read on what sort of activity you're getting on some of your new listings. I know on some of the detached that we've put on, and that's in the west side, 3-4 million range. We're actually getting calls. We've got one under contract and 6 showings at a brand new listing today, listed at 3.9 million. So that's 6 buyers out there looking for a $4 million house in the west side, right? So tells me that
about that, there's $25 million looking for that home, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it just tells me maybe if it was a month ago or 2 months ago, we might not have had that much activity, but I've been pleasantly surprised. Just put a property on the market at the 4 million range in the west side, and a couple of days in, 6 showings booked.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's busy, right? So we'll see.
Yeah. We're seeing the same thing. The activity in February and March, very different than activity in May and June.
Yeah. So again, when things are down and out or things are slow, at some point, they slowly recover, because we've talked about this time and time again. People have to get on with their lives. They got to make some decisions. They got to move. And it's because they've been squeezed out of their own home. They need to upsize. People are retiring. They got to downsize. Relocation, death, divorce. There's reasons that people got to move. And no one wants to own 2 properties in the greater Vancouver because you got speculation tax unless you rent one out. So there's reasons why people have to sort of sell their homes, sell their properties.
Yeah. In the residential market, there's no 100% discretionary.
Yeah. We haven't talked about it, but there's definitely people out there that own secondary real estate. They've had to refinance going from 2% to 4.5% or 4%. And they've seen an increase in payments, and now their rental property is not cash flowing. It's negative cash flow. And maybe, they can afford it, but they'd rather not have to kick in $500 or $1,000 a month to service the property. They'd rather maybe sell that and do something else with the money.
For sure.
Right.
Presale market in Greater Vancouver. So new project launches in the second quarter of 2025 were at cycle lows. Only about 1776 units were brought to the market. City of Vancouver saw very few new presale launches. Same month sales absorption rates, again, much lower than they
Not good.
call it 15 to 20% compared to 40% in
Yeah.
more years.
Yeah.
Investor participation in pre-sales has fallen sharply. So this
hammered.
is the big number for me. From
Yeah.
over 50% in previous cycles to approximately 7% in 2025. And that goes exactly to what you're saying, is that developers require pre-sales to get their financing to build these things. And the most common buyer for a pre-sale condominium was an investor.
Yeah.
Because he could put a tenant in it, he could put him in it, he could put his mom in it, he could put his kids in it,
Yeah.
And without that certainty, that there was never real 100% certainty, but the thinking was fear of missing out. The prices are going to be higher. I can't afford not to buy this thing now. The exact opposite is true now, where they're fearful that, oh my gosh, I'm going to overpay. Well, I'll just wait and see until this thing's finished.
Yeah.
And see how they make out. So what's happening is developers now are offering price reductions 10 to 25%, cash rebates, subsidized mortgage rates, reduced deposit requirements, rental income guarantees. A lot of the assignment sales where buyers are trying to flip their purchases are now listed at or below the original purchase prices. We've seen a lot of buildings where buyers, if they haven't just sort of walked away from large deposits because they're so far underwater from what the original pre-sale was, they're actively trying to unload these things at less than what they've contracted.
Discounted prices. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, this is where the real opportunity in the market lies for those that want to dip their toe in. This is where there's definitely some good opportunity. And I think it's going to stay this way for a while.
Well, and I think developers, a lot of them, there was a big project out at Brentwood. Oh, wait, we're not going to do that one now, like hundreds of units. So they're pausing further phases in a lot of cases until the market conditions improve. And when I look at the comparison between the pre-sale and the resale, the headlines that we're seeing across the board are related primarily to the pre-sale market, where the doom, the gloom, the drama, it's to get clicks, it's to get eyeballs, it's whatever. It's not necessarily representative of what's happening in the regular resale market that we're typically participating in.
But it involves the big developers, some bigger than others, and we're talking big numbers. And so it's kind of newsworthy as well, right?
Oh, it is newsworthy.
There's no question.
Because people look at it, but it wouldn't drive my decision about what I'm going to do if I need a bigger place, if I need a smaller place, if I need another place. Housing in a different location.
But again, keep in mind, in a normal market, you've got all these investors that come in and buy up all this pre-sale condo inventory. Many of them are buying on speculation, right? Thinking that, when it comes time to close, the property might have appreciated by 20%, and with a minimal deposit, they can actually make a pretty good return if they can flip it.
Yeah.
But that now doesn't look as lucrative because the government's going to take a big chunk of your gain in additional speculation tax, or the flipping tax I'm referring to. So they've kind of taken all the incentive away for investors to want to buy these properties. The incentive's gone. So for that reason, that market's kind of evaporated. And then again, you've got falling rent values now. So when you get your pro forma on the rents, you got to factor in that rents might have come down by 10% from the peak. So all of a sudden now you got higher interest rates, lower rents, and the numbers are just not, the math isn't working. So you got a lot of things working against the investor market, and that's just killed that market.
Well, and let's talk about that in the difference between an investor, because my belief is that Vancouver hasn't been an investment market for decades. It's been a speculation market.
Correct.
Like none of these things cash flow. They haven't for decades, but everybody's bought them on, oh, well, don't worry, it'll be worth more.
Yeah, it's pure speculation. And you're right. Without the cash flow, you're not really an investor. You're a speculator. But it's worked because, prices have gone up dramatically over the last 30 years. So for the most part, you didn't have to be that intelligent. You just bought a condo, waited, and you were a superstar because you made money for doing nothing, basically. But
I'd rather be lucky than smart.
That doesn't work so well when rent values are falling, interest rates are rising, and the market's falling, prices are falling. It's the opposite, right? So that's where people get hurt. And now these developers are feeling it with unsold product, canceled projects, and also seeing a reality where, many buyers have decided not to close and walking on deposits. And so the developer's left with these unsold units. So it's a very uncomfortable time for a lot of developers out there. There's no question.
For sure. We look at resale home prices down probably 3 to 5%. On the presale market, maybe 5 to 15, which is, certainly more. Resale inventory is elevated but stable. Presale inventory includes a growing backlog of unsold newly completed units. Resale sellers have more flexibility and less urgency. Developers, oftentimes, as you discussed, under pressure to pay back their construction loans, reach sales target, whatever. So the resale market now dominated by end user buyers, where the presale market has been seen mostly a withdrawal of most investors. So
Yeah.
in the resale market, a lot of homes sold within about a month. Some presale projects remain unsold for 6 to 18 months. Resale properties, little or no incentives, but the presale market right now is featuring aggressive incentives as standard practice. So
Yeah.
I think the market sentiment across both markets is sort of cautious optimism. Buyers seem to have more control in negotiations. They're no longer rushing on things or competing less, probably. Sellers in the resale market are adjusting their prices gradually, but it doesn't feel like many are being forced to sell at fire sale values, right?
Most of my clients, and I'm sure you'll say the same thing, Jeff, no one's coming to me that has to sell because of any kind of financial distress. It's not like that at all. And I get the sense that's pretty well across our markets. It might be different out in the suburbs, but no one's coming to me under any kind of financial distress. It's not like that at all. It's just they're selling because they no longer need the big house anymore, or they need more space. Those are the typical reasons why people are actually, or there's been a death, so it's an estate sale or whatever. But no one's doing it and being forced out for the most part. I'm not sure what the numbers of foreclosures are out there in the market. I'm sure they're up, but we're not seeing anything dramatic, I don't think, as far as people in any kind of financial distress. I don't see that.
I'm not seeing it too much either. We did have a few clients as interest rates were rapidly escalating up, where we had some conversations with some nervous owners saying, this is actually going to change things for us and we need to get on top of it. But as things have started to settle and come off on the other side, I haven't had a conversation like that recently.
That would have been in probably back end of 2023, early 24. We're the same. I had a few clients that were quite nervous about the rates rising, 30% payment increase. That seems to sort of fallen by the wayside. And more now, I think our market was really impacted, just like the rest of the world was impacted by all the economic uncertainty surrounding the tariff situation, which now seems to be settling down, even though it's not really fully resolved. I think everyone's just getting on with their lives, and companies that are being affected are having to pivot. But for the most part, life's carrying on, and people still need to make buying and selling decisions. So I think it's slowly, and I think as time ticks on, the ship will slowly right itself in most segments of the market. Although I'm still very focused on what's going to happen in that high-end market, where you have kind of a lot of those buyers that would have been foreign buyers are locked out, and you don't have a lot of buyers at that high end for condos and the luxury market. But for the more mid-range and the low end, I think the ship slowly rights itself, and we're back into a more of a stabilized market as we get into the back end of the year and into 26.
I have written down why peak media pessimism signals peak opportunity.
Yeah. Well, listen, when the market is fearful, that's a great time to buy, right?
Yeah, totally. My first bullet point is media amplifies short-term extremes. So real estate media, YouTube headlines, chase clicks by exaggerating the pain, particularly using worst-case examples like underwater presale buyers, assignment losses, or stalled towers. These are real, but anecdotal and not representative, is the point we're making of the entire market.
Not the general market. There's specific situations that are happening, but not a cross-section of what's going on in the general marketplace. Yeah.
Smart capital moves when the public is paralyzed. And this goes right back to what you said about 15 minutes ago with, your clients that were courageous enough to buy in these down markets, 98, 2008, 2012, 2019, when nobody wanted anything. In a lot of cases, those ended up being the absolute best time to buy, right?
It's always great when the market's quiet and the news headlines are negative and know it's painful and everyone's telling you not to do it because they're kind of jealous that you can do it. And they don't want to see you make money. If you can buy when the market is out of favor, it is a great time if you've got a long-term trajectory. It's like, again, in April, if you could have had the guts to go out and buy, 10 great stocks of 10 great companies, today you're up 25, 35, 40% on some of those companies. You've seen a huge snapback in the marketplace. And so if you buy great real estate in great locations, when it's on sale and no one's chasing you behind you, that's the time to do it. And, I have clients that'll say, Andrew, you know what? We're ready to buy, but we're going to hold off. We're just uncertain about the market. And I know what they're waiting for. They're waiting for the market to pick up and all the news media to turn positive again. And then again, very quickly, as you know, in Vancouver, it snaps back pretty quick. And you've got the media saying, oh, the market's picking up. So all of a sudden, everyone starts to sort of pile in again. Yeah. And you'll have days again where you've got open houses with 50 pairs of shoes in front again, right? It'll be busy again, right? But the smart people, the ones with the money, the cash ready to go, it takes a little bit of guts, but when the market's out of favor, I can't stress how much of a great time that is to do something,
Totally. And one of the other advantages on that, presale pricing tends to be rather opaque, like MLS listed resales. Everybody knows exactly what happened.
It's all out there.
Like, here's the list price. Here's the sale price. Here's the days on market. Like there's no surprises there.
Yeah.
Whereas with some of the developers, they want to, and to their credit, they want to protect their equity of the rest of the project. They want to protect their existing buyers who have already bought. They don't want them to back out. But oftentimes you can negotiate backdoor incentives, decorating credit.
It's called, I was going to say, it's a decorating allowance.
Yeah.
And we just sold something just off Main Street, and the buyer, our client, he got a storage locker thrown in. He got a very, very generous decorating allowance.
Yes.
They reduced the deposit requirement, and they gave him way more flexibility on his closing date. Like, it was quite dramatic. I was shocked when he wanted all these things thrown into the contract. I thought, he's not going to get this. He's not going to get that. They're going to throw us out. They were more than willing to negotiate with us. It was quite unbelievable. So yes, the developer won't reduce the price, but they'll throw in an incentive like a decorating credit, which in effect does the same thing. It just doesn't show up on the land transfer on the price negotiated. Because they want to protect the value of all the other clients that bought in there. But you're right. There's tremendous incentives which you can negotiate. And some of these developers, they want your business right now. They are hungry to do a deal.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that too. The supply right now is pretty grand, but with new product launches are down,
dramatic,
60 to 70%, let's call it, from peak levels. Oversupply today is actually the tail end of the last cycle. So if we're looking forward 2026, 2027, new completions are likely going to plunge just as demand will likely rebound. So the people buying today are actually positioning themselves ahead of the next undersupply shock.
Yeah, so I think by 2020, and this is getting out there, but before you know it, the years clip by pretty quick. 2028, 2029, 2030, we could have a real shortage of new condo product coming to the market. And that bodes well for the people that are buying right now, right? So, So again, you got to have the foresight, but there's no question there's going to be a shortage of new product in 3 or 4 years with starts plummeting. Builders aren't building, the new projects are not starting. They're not buying the product because the numbers aren't working. Right.
And end user buyers now, they're facing fairly light competition. So with investors basically exiting the field for presale, local buyers have breathing room for the first time in years. So no lineups, no lotteries, no fear of being outbid. They can take the time, they can negotiate and buy with confidence. Conditions that historically have been quite rare, right?
The buyers are in a much better mood right now, I find, when they're out there looking. They're just calm. They feel in control, versus most years, buyers are frazzled, they're aggravated, they're giving you pressure.
I don't know how many times I've had the conversation in the car. Listen, you guys, I'm really sorry we didn't get it. There was 15 other offers. And buying a home is supposed to be a lot more fun than this. And you sort of go and you take a look at it. You think about it overnight. You go back and have a second look. You bring your mom and dad to take a view.
You can have
And
you
then
can spend
you
all
write
you
an
can spend.
offer. You negotiate for a couple of days, and then you have subjects, and you get everything all done. Like all of a sudden, we could do all that stuff again. And the buyers, like you say, they're in a much better mood. They're like, "Well, this is great. This is actually, it's kind of a fun process as they're getting into the beginning stages of if they're buying their first place, or if they're trading up and they're doing something that's exciting as their family's growing, or they just need more space, whatever's happening, right?"
They're in a much better mood. And I think about if you go back, say, to the year 2000, 25 years, how many years out of that 25 have we had a market like this where buyers can take their time and feel relaxed? Out of those 25 years, it's
Both of
not,
them.
it's not many of those years. Most of the years are the other way where the market's ramped up and you're really having to compete and throw in offers without conditions and all of that. So this is a really nice opportunity for people to sort of take their time and negotiate a good deal.
So if we
Right.
want to think like a contrarian operator, we listen to Baron Rothschild. When there's blood in the streets, even if it's your own, that's when you buy.
Yeah. Market is fearful. That's when you get greedy.
Yeah.
Go and find yourself a home, or again, whether it's an investment property or a home to move into, condo, house, townhouse. This is the time to try and negotiate some good terms for you, right?
Well, and like every time I come back to Vancouver from being away, I'm always struck by how amazing it actually is here.
Yeah.
Is if we believe, and I do, in Vancouver's probable population growth, immigration flow, land constraints, structural housing shortages, that those are all going to persist long term, this moment of pre-sale market distress is not a time to retreat if you want to buy some real estate in Vancouver, right?
Long-term trajectory, Vancouver with its limited land and desirability, place to live, even though it's very unaffordable for many people, will continue to attract capital, and prices in the long term will probably continue to sort of trend higher. That's just the reality. You can't, people want to be here. We've got the climate, we've got the geography, and it's a nice place to live. We got fresh air, right? And so it's where people want to be. And there's a lot of places in North America that don't have that. So we are very, and not just North America, globally, we are very, very lucky to live in this neck of the woods. There's no question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we should solve the housing crisis.
Well, that's not an easy one. That is not an easy one. Maybe that's an area you don't really want to go. I mean, look, how do you make the city more affordable without squashing people's equity, which is not a good thing? It's not easy. People want to be here. I think if people want to live in Vancouver and they can't afford to live here, then they've got to make other choices, right? If you work, say, in Tokyo or London or any of the other big cities, you don't own a house within 5 miles of the core. You commute. You come in from far out and you commute. That's how you live, because you can't afford to live in the core of these cities. And it just means people are going to have to commute. To live in the core of the city is expensive. And that's just the reality. You can't kill people's equity. People are always going to want to be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's pick up on that one another time.
Yeah, I know. Jeff,
Andrew, thank you. Pleasure as always. And I'm excited to be out there and working. There's lots of people to serve and lots of problems to solve. So let's get out there and do it.
I agree. We'll talk to you soon. And for those people looking to buy or sell, don't forget, we're always welcoming your calls, your emails, your texts. Reach out to us anytime. We're here to solve your real estate problem.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate your time and your attention. If we can be of further help or information, we look forward to hearing from you. We respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.